Welcome to an evening with Rabbi Glatstein, a shir that he's going to be giving. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be here again and welcome you. I did it last year. I want to thank Rabbi Poston and Yiboneh for sponsoring and arranging this evening. Rabbi Glatstein, who I think many people know him because of his work and the shiurim that he posts online at TorahAnytime.com. And anybody who listens to the shiurim knows that it's a treat to listen to it because he's such a great Maggid shir. It's going to be even a bigger treat to listen to him in person because he's actually a lot of fun to listen to. I want to, besides all the accolades that I could mention, I will just want to mention two. Rabbi Glatstein is the Morid Asher of a shul in Cedarhurst called Kilos Avas Yisrael. He started there about 2 years ago, yeah? And they were able to raise about $3 million to build a new shul in the last year. So I think a lot of credit goes to the rabbi and the people who believe in him, who wanted to support that effort. In addition to all the other great things that he is, Rabbi Glatstein is now also a Mechaber Sfarim. He just came out. This is a new book called Magid Harakia. This is about Adar, Purim, and Megillas Esther. You're going to be getting a taste of it tonight, because the topic for tonight, of course, is the joy of Adar, or how to infuse the joy of Adar into the whole year. This sefer, which we've had some fun kind of dealing with the publishers, will be available hopefully by Adar. Here in Israel as well. So anybody who's interested, you can pre-order it or anything like that. It is in Hebrew, it's not in English, but it has, great care has been taken to make sure that the voice of Rabbi Glatstein comes through in the Sefer itself, in the shiurim, in the Sefer. So without further ado, let me introduce Rabbi Daniel Glatstein.
Thank you, Reb Sal, for that very warm introduction. Sal is obviously a chacham, because chachamim tell us, derech chachamim l'daber b'lashon guzma. Smart people exaggerate. So I appreciate the introduction, and I'm sure my mother appreciates it as well.
The problem is nobody knows what I'm exaggerating about.
I want to thank Reb Sal and his wife Raz for their gracious hospitality and having us over the last week, and for arranging the trip and making it possible yet again for another year, and for giving us really a time of our lives. So Hashem should bless you and your wife and your whole family with only happy occasions, simchas and nachas, ad b'yas goel tzedek.
Amen.
I want to thank Rabbi Aaron Poston for arranging tonight's event and for sponsoring of Yiboneh, who are always at the forefront of Harbatzas HaTorah here in Eretz Yisrael and in various venues around the world. So we wish Rabbi Aaron Hatzlacha and all of his endeavors. L'Havdalah Torah L'Adira. I want to welcome my good friend Rabbi David Callis and all of our friends who have come this evening. Let's begin with the following. The well-known Gemara, Masechta Tainis, Daf Chav Testament Aleph. The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Brei Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei de Rav. Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas, said in the name of Rav, that Kishem Shemisha Nechnas Av Mematin B'Simcha. Just like when Av comes in, we diminish our joy. Kach Misha Nichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. So too, when the month of Adar enters, we increase our joy. And that's a very curious word. Misha Nichnas Adar. When Adar enters, what does it mean when Adar enters? Why doesn't it say Mitchilas Adar, Beroish Adar? What does it mean when Adar enters? How does a month enter? Where does it enter into? Well, Rav Chaim Kanievsky is quoted as saying, we just visited him the other day, Rav Chaim Kanievsky is quoted as saying that Mishenichnas Adar only begins the second day of Rosh Chodesh. The first day of Rosh Chodesh is still Shabbat. So Reb Chaim says it does not begin until the first day of Rosh Chodesh. So don't worry, you don't need to be happy yet. I know you're getting nervous. You could continue to be miserable for yet one more extra day. Mishanichnas Adar does not begin until the second day of Rosh Chodesh, according to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. However, comes the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai is in the Sefer Adar Eliyahu. We're not up to the sheet yet. And the Ben Ish Chai writes, Misha Nichnas. It doesn't say Misha Higia when it reaches. No, not Misha Higia, Misha Nichnas. Misha Nichnas means already from the Moilad of Chodesh Adar, we already have to start increasing our joy, says the Ben Ish Chai in Parshas Mishpatim. This week's Parsha in the Sefer Adar Eliyahu. So according to the Ben Ish Chai, yeah, you could start getting nervous. You would have to start being happy already from the Moilad of Rosh Chodesh Adar. Comes Rabbi Victor Nebenzal in the Sefer Yerushalayim B'Mayadeha, as well as, I once heard this in the name of the Beis Yisrael. Actually, today we are in Har HaZeisim, and our good friend Josh Wander said, you know, you want to go to the kever of the Ger Rebbe. So I said, the kever? I didn't know the Ger Rebbe, sir. I'm one of the only people who has the key. So he opened up a cave. And in the cave are the kvarim of all the Ger Rebbes buried in Eretz Yisrael. Maybe there's one in the Chatzar of Ger. And the Beis Yisrael also says, what does it mean? Misha Nichnas Adar Marben B'Simcha. Misha Nichnas Adar, and now we're going to start really sweating. Already from Shabbos Mevarchim Chodesh Adar, that's this Shabbos, we already begin our increase in Simcha. So now we're getting, the heat is being turned up. Already from Shabbos, Rosh Chodesh Mevarchim Adar, from the Shabbos we begin our joy. However, it's brought in the name of the Minchas Elazar, the Munkatcher, that it says, Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. When Adar comes in, we increase our joy. That means we already have to start being happy before we just add it up a notch when Adar comes. So it says the Munkatcher, already Rosh Chodesh Shvat, we start to be happy. We just crank it up a little bit by Rosh Chodesh Adar. So already sort of in the spirit. We're already at least close enough, according to most opinions, and certainly according to the Minchas Elazar, we're already within the arm's reach of Purim. So we want to speak about the topic of Simcha, and how to extend the joy of Purim and the joy of Adar throughout the year. There's a very interesting custom that we all have. It's actually brought in the Ramah. We know when we make Havdalah Matzai Shabbos, we say, LaYehudim Haysa'ira V'Simcha V'Sasa Mikar Keinti Alanu. We say LaYehudim, for the Yehudim. They had Oira, light, the Simcha and joy, V'Sasa and happiness, Vikar and glory. Where is that a pasuk? In Megillas Esther. It's one of the 4 psukim of Gula that we all say out loud. LaYehudim Haysa'ira V'Simcha V'Sasa Mikar. You ever wonder? It's not Purim Matzai Shabbos. It's Saturday night. Shabbos has left. Why in the world are we invoking a pasuk from Megillas Esther on Matzai Shabbos? Why invoke the pasuk La Yehudim Haisa Oira B'Simcha V'Sasayin Vikar? And the truth is that this is not the only mention and reference to Purim in Havdalah. I maybe was not so aware of this, and I recently maybe upgraded my practice. Shulchan Aruch writes that when you smell besamim on Matzai Shabbos, you should smell what? Hadasim, myrtles. Says the Ramah, you're not required to smell myrtles, but it's better. So I this was something I overlooked. It's not an outright obligation, but certainly it's a minhag that's based in halacha to try to put myrtles in your besamim. If you're going to keep a halacha, this is an easy one to upgrade to put hadasim in the besamim. Okay, it's very nice. It smells good. So this year, took out my hadasim from the lulav. You cut it up and you put it in the besamim box. Very nice. And the question is, why smell hadasim the Matzai Shabbos? Ayin b'Beis Yosef. Look in the Beis Yosef. And the Beis Yosef says, well, if you look at the pasuk in Yeshaya, the pasuk says in Yeshaya, Tachas hanatzutz yale b'roish. V'sachas hasirpad yale hadas. And then it says, Shoimer Shabbos mechal aloi. So in the context of Shabbos, it says hadasim. So therefore we smell Hadassah Matzoi Shabbos, because in the context of the Navi Yeshaya speaking about Shabbos, he mentions Hadassah. But how interesting it is that what is this pasuk referring to? Tachas hanatzutz yala beroish, the Gemara Megillah Darshans. Who is the natzutz? Who is the thorn? Haman, yala beroish, Mordechai. Tachas hasirpad. Who's the sirpad? Vashti, yala hadas, Esther. Interesting that the pasuk that we learn out to smell Hadasim Matzoi Shabbos is specifically referring to the salvation of Purim. Again, another mention and another reference to Purim in Havdalah. But it doesn't stop here. We know in Havdalah we use 2 wicks, 2 neiros. The Chassam Sofer writes in the Drashos Chassam Sofer that the 2 neiros, the 2 wicks of Havdalah, are a reference and a remez to the 2 Jewish heroes, Mordechai and Esther. So, haloi davar. It can't be for naught. It's not a coincidence. There must be some important connection between the procedure and ritual of Havdalah and Purim. If you look at Havdalah, there's so many references and remazim to Purim. You have La Yehudim Ha'isa'ira V'simcha V'sasamikar. You have the Inyan, the concept of using Hadassim. You have the 2 neiros, which is a reference to Purim. So what exactly is this important connection that every Saturday night, as we're about to take leave of Shabbos, the last thing on our mind is Megillas Esther and the Yom Tov of Purim. Every Matzoi Shabbos, what do? We invoke Purim. Why invoke Purim every Matzoi Shabbos? Who made the statement? Mishenichnas Adar Marbin B'simcha. Who is the Baal HaMemra? Amar Rav Yehuda, Berei de Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas Mishmei de Rav. Interesting name, Shilas, no? Shilas? Is that a man's name? I mean, I guess. Usually in the Gemara, it always tells you the name of the father. Amar Rav Yehuda, Berei Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas. What kind of name is Shilas? Why was Rabbi Yehuda the only one who said this halacha? And until Rabbi Yehuda, what happened? Everybody walked around mourning during the month of Adar? Rabbi Yehuda was mechadesh this halacha? Why is Rabbi Yehuda the Baal HaMemra? Why is he the one who made this statement? Another question, and then we'll try to investigate this very important subject. In that Haftarah that we laid on a tightness from the Navi Yeshaya, the pasuk says, "V'haya Lashem Lashem," that God made a name for Himself. Says the Gemara Megillah, when did God make a name for Himself? Zu Mikra Megillah. Through the establishment of the reading of the Megillah, God made a reputation and a name for Himself. Now, if you were to ask me, which book in the Tanakh least contributes to the name of God, if you had to say, God made a name for Himself, the last book that I would come up with, through which God made a name for Himself, is the one book that God's name does not appear, Megillas Esther. How could the Navi say, how could the Gemara say, that how did God make a name for Himself through Megillas Esther? God's name is not in Megillas Esther. And we know there are many reasons for that, but whatever reason you want to give, the upshot is, and the bottom line is, God's name is not in the Megillah. So how could the Gemara say that God created a name for Himself through Mikra Megillah? So let's analyze a few specific episodes in the Purim story. And let's begin in number 1. And please forgive me, I'm going to have to lay in. Remember that pasuk? It's the last parak of Megillah Esther. It's the third to last pasuk of the Megillah. That the king Achashverosh taxed the land and the islands. And the simple question, a 2-word question is, who cares? Why is this in the Megillah? The purpose of the Megillah is not to give historical information, is not to give historical background. The purpose of the Megillah is to magnify the miracle of the story. There is no extraneous historic information in the Megillah. As we know, the very next pasuk is V'chol Masei Sakpai V'rasai, and all the story of the strength and the might Ufarashas Gedulas Mordechai, and the intrigue of the episode of Mordechai. You want to know the palace intrigue? You want to know the rest of the story? You want to know other details? Haloheim Kesuvim, they are written b'Sefer Divrei Hayamim, in the book of the Chronicles, Lemalche Madai Faras, of Persia and Media. What's this pasuk teaching us? This pasuk is teaching us, says Rabbi Chesed Abramsky, that no historical information is thrown into the Megillah just to get a better picture of what was going on in the times. This is not a work of history. This is not a work of archaeology. This is not a work of to commemorate the past. All that stuff, you got to go into the Chronicles of Persia and Media. This book was written for one reason and one reason only: Parsume Nisa, to publicize the miracle. It's incredible. If that's the very next pasuk, so then we're entitled to ask, what in the world is the pasuk before teaching us? Why does the Megillah say that Achashverosh taxed the people? Who cares that he taxed the people? It's irrelevant. It's unnecessary, useless information. And this is the question of the Brisker Rav, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Soloveitchik. And he gives an interesting answer, but b'siyata d'shmaya, we would like to explore a really incredible possibility here. Please take a look at number 5 on your sheet. Because number 5 on your sheet is going to bring out maybe the main principle of Megillas Esther. The king says, who's in the courtyard? Haman was coming to the courtyard of the king to hang Mordechai on the tree. Asher heichin loy, that he prepared for him. There's an extra word in this pasuk. It could have just said Asher heichin. No, Asher heichin loy, that he prepared for him. Obviously for him. Then for who? Says the Gemara, 3 words, which is the whole foundation of Megillas Esther. Heichin loy tana. We learned loy heichin. He didn't prepare it for Mordechai. He prepared it for himself. Haman thought he was building this tree. Look at Rashi, number 7. L'tzarech atzmai. He's making it for himself. Haman thought he was making a tree 50 amos tall to hang Mordechai. No. All of his efforts, all of his energies, all of his machinations were to hang himself. This is the central principle of Megillas Esther. That God did not just orchestrate events to save us. God used, hijacked, co-opted the plans, the machinations of Haman. God said, you plan whatever you want, I'll use your plan to get back at you. You know, the Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin, if you look at number 16, the Gemara says, there was a man by the name of Ovadia. Ovadia was a rare personality. He was one of the only Nevi'im who descended from Esav. What else? Ovadia came from Gerim. He was from a Ger Adoimim. He was from Edomite converts. And what did he prophesy about? He prophesied about the downfall of Edom. He prophesied about the destruction of Edom. So isn't that ironic that somebody who comes from Edom would prophesy about the downfall of Edom? So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Lamed Testament Beis, Ovadia Ger Adoimi Haya. By the way, I just want to mention, I just remembered, Amar Ephraim Aksha Talmido Shel Reb Meir. You know who says Ovadia was a Ger Adoimi? Reb Meir. I once saw the Abarbanel. How did Reb Meir know? Because Reb Meir was also a descendant of Esav. So he knew the family history. That's why he's the Baal HaMemra over here. Reb Meir is the one who says Ovadia was a Ger Adoimi. Ovadia was a Zayda. Ovadia also came from Edom. Okay, back to the ranch. So it says it's ironic that a descendant of Edom would prophesy about the downfall of Edom. Says the Gemara, no, this is the method of heaven. And there's an expression for this. V'hainu da'amri inchi, this is what people say, Meneu be'aba, nezu be'narga. From the forest itself comes the handle for the axe. It's a song. If you don't know it, good. Okay. From the forest itself comes the handle for the axe. What does that mean? That means here you have a woodsman, and he's chopping down the whole forest. And where does the handle for that axe come from? from the forest itself. Meaning God will sometimes take the weapon and the plan of the Rasha and hijack it to bring about the results that God himself wants. And let's bring a few very powerful illustrations of this, first in the Chumash, and then ultimately in the Megillah. So there's a guy named Paroi. Paroi makes a decree. The astrologers say, hey Paroi, today's a bad day. We foresee in our astrological signs that the Savior of the Jewish people is going to be born today. So, you got to drown him. So Paroi makes a decree. We're going to get... By the way, never do that. Always turn off your phone when you give a shir. Never do that. Sorry. Very embarrassing. I'm going to turn it off now. Thank you. That's what you should not do. Okay. So, there's a man, Paroi makes a decree that all the boys have to be thrown into the sea. So, there's this little baby floating by the Nile, and Basia, his daughter, sees the baby, and she knows that if she takes this baby in, she's jeopardizing her life. But on the other hand, the baby's crying, and she has Rahmanas on the kid. And she takes the kid in, and she brings the kid into the palace. And what happens? She says, look, I have a new adopted child. Daddy, I have to go out tonight. You mind taking care of the child? So one night, all of a sudden, Paro's sleeping, and this little baby wakes up Paro, and Paro has no choice. He's rocking Moshe back to sleep. He's feeding Moshe the bottom. So Paro thought that he was going to eradicate the Savior of the Jewish people. Meanwhile, he's waking up at night to feed this little kid. Then the next day, Abasi says, I just got a bill for the baby food. You want to pay it? I said, okay, on my credit card. Then Moshe has to go to Gan. Abasi sends Paro the tuition bill. Paro pays it. Moshe has to go to kindergarten. Paro foots the bill. Moshe has to learn how to behave. Paro's training him. Moshe's tie isn't straight. Paro said, you got to straighten your tie. You're going to be a leader one day. Says Ibn Ezra that had Moshe Rabbeinu grown up with the rest of the Jewish people, they all had a slave mentality. So he never would have been able to be groomed as a leader of Klal Yisrael. So the Hashgacha, he grew up in Paro's palace. He grew up amidst royalty so that he could have a royal bearing and be the leader of the Jewish people. So Paro thought he was destroying the Savior of the Jewish people. Meanwhile, his decree didn't destroy Moshe. It created Moshe. It groomed Moshe. It prepared Moshe to be the leader of the Jewish people. So, Paro never gets his due. We always say, Moshe, Torah tzivalanu Moshe. Torah tzivalanu Paro. Paro is responsible for the Torah. Because Paro saved Moshe. How did Paro save Moshe? By decreeing to destroy him. God created Moshe through the decree of Paro. Haman says this Achashverosh guy is the most wishy-washy guy in the world. One minute he decides to kill Vashti, the next minute he'll change his mind. The only way to capitalize on this Meshugana is we're going to make the gallows 50 amos tall. So that if he ever gets really angry at somebody, he'll just say immediately, hang him on it, and he won't have second thoughts. This way, when I get Achashverosh angry at Mordechai, he'll say, hey Mordechai! Thank you so much, Haman. This way, when Haman takes one little misstep with Esther, Haman should have just said, hey, Achashverosh, sorry about that, I tripped. Instead, Achashverosh, we're going to kill him! They said, where? What do you mean where? He looks up and the tree is staring him right in the face. Had that gallows not been 50 amos tall, we may still have been dealing with those Amalekim. But because Haman realized that Achashverosh is what's called a hafach-fachan, he was a wishy-washy guy, and he had to construct the gallows 50 amos tall, that's what brought about the downfall of Haman. Let me give you a few other incredible examples. Look at number 23. This is the decree of Haman. Send out the books through the runners. The documents were explicit. Eradicate the Jews. But look at the next pasuk. That's what the messengers sent. Pas shegen hakisav linasein dasvum indamdina galoi l'chol ha'amim. But the text of the document that was galoi l'chol ha'amim, revealed before all the peoples. Listen carefully, says the Gra. The messengers knew that on the 13th day of Adar, the Jews would be destroyed. The messengers knew it. But what did it say on the document? Pas shegen haksav, to be read and to be given in every community? All it said was, Liyos asidim layoim hazeh. Be prepared for the 13th of Adar. And what's going to happen on the 13th day of Adar? It didn't say. It was blank. Beware of the Ides of March. It didn't say what was going to happen. Meaning the messengers knew, but they didn't record it black and white. Why didn't they record it black and white? Says the Gra, they would have written on the message that we're going to kill the Jews on the 13th day of Adar. Then the Jews would get wind of what the Goyim wanted to do to them, and they would run away, or they would arm themselves, or they would try resistance. So therefore the messengers knew what it meant, but it didn't say on the Pashkavilim what exactly was going to happen on the 13th day of Adar. Luckily it didn't say it. Because if it would have said that the Gentiles were able to kill us on the 13th day of Adar, then Achashverosh never would have been able to reverse the decree. Because the law in Persia was, Ki chesav asher nichtav b'shem hamelech, the nachtoim, the tabas hamelech, ein lahashiv. If there was a document written and sealed with the signet ring of the king, it could never be rescinded. So luckily, Haman was stupid enough not to write on the document what's going to happen on the 13th day of Adar. He thought if it's written on the document what's going to happen, the Jews would save themselves. Little did he know that by not writing exactly what's on the document, now it could be rescinded. Because all the document said, be prepared for the 13th day of Adar. So Achashverosh said, okay, perfect. I don't have to retract anything. You Jews, now be prepared for the 13th day of Adar. Now you're going to kill your enemies. Had Haman not been such a Ibra Chacham, we would have been in really hot water. But God utilized his plans, his machinations, his techniques, his schemes to be able to destroy Haman himself. There's another example. The wife of Haman. By the way, does anybody know how many times does Haman's name appear in Megillas Esther? 54 times. 54 times Haman's name is in Megillas Esther. And how many times is Mordechai's name in Megillas Esther? Same number of times. Zelu Umasan. Does anybody know how many psukim there are in Megillas Esther? There are 166 psukim in Megillas Esther. How many psukim in the Chumash speak, how many words in the Chumash speak about the downfall and the destruction of Amalek? How many words? Well, we have 9 psukim in Mishalach and 3 psukim in Kiseitze. A total of, incredibly, 166 words in the Chumash to destroy Amalek. That's the number of psukim in Megillas Esther, says Rekach. How many letters in the 10 sons of Haman? 54 letters. How many words in Bimei Mordechai V'Esther B'Shushan Avira? 54 words. 54 times Haman is in the Megillah. Ki machai, God says, you know who I'm going to destroy? Emche. Emche is numerical value 54. Machai, I will destroy Emche, the 54 times Haman is in Megillah, the 54 letters of the 10 sons of Haman. So here's a great example. Haman says, you know, what should I do with Mordechai? I'm really angry at him. I really want to get back at him. So Zeresh says, I have such a great idea. You need to go running to the king in the morning, first thing, before anybody could possibly say one good word about Mordechai. Get to Achashverosh first thing in the morning. So Haman says, that's such a great idea. I'm going to run to Achashverosh first thing in the morning. And boy, is it a good thing that he came first thing in the morning. Because Achashverosh was tossing and turning the whole night. because he realized that he had received the benefit from Mordechai that he never paid back. So that when Haman, for the first time in his life, he was early to something, came running in first thing in the morning, Achashverosh said, you know, what should I do to someone whom I want to honor? And Haman was there, let him realize we are the royal horse, and so on and so forth. So Achashverosh told him, you do it! But had he not been there early in the morning, he would have missed that whole opportunity. But here's the very best example. This is absolutely incredible. You know, in the beginning of the story, Achashverosh has a problem with his wife. Now, if you're the king of the world, and you have a problem with your wife, you don't really need to ask anybody's advice what to do. But Achashverosh seems to be very dependent. Achashverosh spoke and he asked the stargazers, the astrologers. Why? That was the protocol of the king, right? So yes, he asked these 7 guys what to do with Vashti. Why is Achashverosh asking somebody's advice? If he's not happy with his wife, he can do whatever he wants to her. He's not really dependent on anybody else. Why is he asking the advice of the 7 advisors of Parasamane? So there's an incredible Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon says, in number 38, Vayomer hamelech lachachomim yoidei hoitim kichein devar hamelech lefnei kol yoidei dasvadim. The Gra reveals to us that the law in Persia was the king has the final say on every single matter. He doesn't have to ask advice, he doesn't need to go through checks and balances, he's a dictator, he's the king of the world. But there's one exception. There is one time that Achashverosh must ask the advice of others. And that's what? That's when Kichein Devar Hamelech. That whenever there's a rule, whenever there's a case, whenever there's a judgment that affects him, and he's Noigei Abedavar, he's biased, it's relevant to him, he must ask the advice of other advisors. Kichein Devar Hamelech. Then when it's relevant to the king, he has to ask someone else's advice. Lifnei kol yoidei dasvadim. So therefore he says, look, I know I'm the king of the world, but now it's relevant to me, so I have to ask your advice. And what advice did they give Achashverosh? Vayomer Memuchan, v'yamech v'hasarim. Memuchan tells Achashverosh, Yetzei dvar malchus milefanav. What does it mean, Yetzei dvar malchus milefanav? King, get with the program. You're the king of the world. Just decide on your own. So the king says, but the rule in Persia is that when it's relevant to me, I have to ask others' advice. So Memuchan says, bad rule, bad law, change the law. You're the king. Who cares about the law? The king doesn't have to abide by the law. Memuchan tells Achashverosh, Yetzei dvar malchus milefanav. You make the call always. So later on in the Megillah, when Haman takes the misstep with Esther, and who comes along and advises the king? Vayomer charvayna echad min hasorisim lefnei hamelech gam hinei ha'etz asher asa Haman. Right? Charvayna comes and says, Achashverosh, here's the tree, here's the gallows, hang Haman. And what does Achashverosh say? 2 words. Tilu alav, hang him. How is Achashverosh allowed to hang Haman? But it's relevant to Achashverosh. He should ask the Chachamim Yodereitim. You know why? Because there was a man by the name of Memuchan who told Achashverosh, bad law. Abolish the law. From now on, you make all the calls. And who's Memuchan? Haman. Thank you so much, Haman. If not for you, Chabana would have said, hang him, and Achashverosh would have said, let me ask the Chachamim Yodei Itim, and maybe they would have had Rachmanis on Haman. They were in cahoots with Haman, after Haman was part of the assemblage. But because Haman told Achashverosh, Yetzei dvar malchus milefanav, from now on you make all the calls, so when Achashverosh got angry at Haman, he didn't have to ask anyone's advice, he just knocked him off. Friends, let's come to the end of the Megillah. So what we're learning is the whole pattern of the Megillah. The whole operation of the Megillah is God is not just orchestrating events. You see, Rabbi David Tevel in the Beis David explains that there's nothing blatantly miraculous about the Purim story. Yes, it's a collection of a lot of seeming coincidences that you'll say to yourself, well, somebody's obviously pulling the strings. You know, maybe this itself is not a miracle, and that detail is not a miracle, and the other detail is not a miracle, but the conglomeration and combination of all the various seeming incredible coincidences, someone's obviously pulling the strings. Well, says Rabbi David Tevel, maybe you'll argue and say, you know, maybe it's a random collection of coincidences. So how does God show, absolutely, that this is not a coincidence? That someone is definitively pulling the strings? Through this methodology of by using every plan and machination of Haman, hijacking it, co-opting it, and using it against him. Now it's clear. Yes, there's no splitting of the Red Sea in the Purim story. But now it's clear that somebody's pulling the strings. We now go to Sefer Ezra, number 43. And Sefer Ezra takes place years after the Purim story, and the king of Persia at the time was Darius. And Darius says to the Jewish people who had returned to Israel, you're having a hard time supplying Yerushalayim. You're having a hard time building the Beis HaMikdash, building the walls of Yerushalayim. Not a problem. I am going to empty out my storehouses and my treasury and send you as much money as you need. And in fact, if you look at number 3, whatever you want. Umini simteim, I'm issuing a decree, lamad disavdon and saba yudaya ilech. Darius says, cooperate with the Jews. Uminichse malka, from the royal estate, imidas avarnara, of the taxes, pay for the rebuilding and restoration of the Beis HaMikdash. And likewise, in number 46, Darius says in Pasuk Chaf, empty out the treasury of taxes and give the money to the Jewish people to rebuild the second Beis HaMikdash. And I ask you, friends, where did Darius get all this money from? Where did he get all this tax money from to rebuild the second temple? How did he have all this wealth? Where did he have this Yerusha from? We know who his father was, Achashverosh. And where did Achashverosh get the money from? That the end of the Megillah, Achashverosh taxes the people. And we ask, who cares? Why is that in the story? It's irrelevant information. No, stay tuned. Keep your eyes open. Read a little further on in the Nevi'im. Get to Sefer Ezra. You'll see he had a son, Darius, who, by the way, was the son of Achashverosh and Esther. And that son is going to inherit all that tax money. And when the Jewish people need to rebuild the second temple, Darius is going to open up the treasury. So listen to the incredible Hashgacha Pratis of the Purim story. While Megillas Esther begins, that Achashverosh is celebrating 70 years since the destruction of the temple, meaning the temple will never be rebuilt. The beginning of the story opens up, Achashverosh is gloating over Churban. He takes out the Kelim of the Beis HaMikdash, saying the Beis HaMikdash will never be rebuilt. By the end of the Purim story, Achashverosh has become the chief fundraiser of the second Beis HaMikdash. Al ha'etz asher heichid lai. Achashverosh thought he was celebrating Churban. Little did he know that he was raising the building fund for the second Beis HaMikdash. Al ha'etz asher heichid, that's the summit of Megillas Esther. That's the climax of the story. It's the end of the story. You cannot get more of an ahapayichu than that. Achashverosh is going around collecting money for us. No envelopes, no phone calls, no parlor meetings, no Chinese auctions. Achashverosh is collecting the money. Where do you think he got the money from? All the money that Haman paid him to kill the Jews, Achashverosh gave over as Yerusha to his son to rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. Thank you, Haman, for being the main contributor to into the second Beis Hamikdash. So the truth is, if you would walk into the second temple and you'd see plaques, you know, what would the plaques say? Friedman, Levine, no! The plaques on the second Beis Hamikdash would say, this temple is proudly sponsored by Achashverosh in honor of Klal Yisrael. This temple is proudly sponsored by Haman in honor of his beloved Jewish people. Haman thought he was going to eradicate Mordechai and keep the Beis Hamikdash in ruins. Little did he know that he's responsible for the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Al ha'etz asher heichen loy tana loy heichen. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Breder of Shmuel, Bar Shilas Mishmei Derav. Hashem's name is not in Megillas Esther. But you know, in Megillas Esther, the name for the Jewish people is different than anywhere else in Tanakh. Everywhere else in Tanakh, we're Yisrael, Bnei Yaakov. And in Megillas Esther, what's our name? Yehuda! Yehudim! You know why we're called Yehudim? There's a mitzvah in the Torah. There's a mitzvah. David Amel says, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. Put God before me always. Mishnah Berurah even says one should imagine in their mind the imagery, Yud, and then a Hey, and then a Vav, and a Hey. That's the mitzvah of Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. It's on the very first page of the Mishnah Berurah. Always imagine that the name of God is in front of you. But there's one level of imagining the name of God is in front of you. But when you reach the level where you imbibe and integrate this concept into your very fabric, into your very being, then instead of the name of God being in front of you, you become Yehudim. The Shlach HaKadosh says, look at the name Yehuda, and you'll see wonders. Yehuda is Yud, Hey, and then a Vav and a Hey, Hashem's name, plus the Dalid, which is the fourth leg of the Kisei HaKavod. Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David HaMelech is the fourth leg. The Jewish people in the time of Purim realized, integrated, felt that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not only pulling the strings, they saw clearly God's absolute control over the events of history, where the Rasha could plan and scheme, and God said, plan and scheme whatever you want, I'll use your plan right back at ya. The Jewish people fulfilled the Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. That not only was the name of God always in front of them, the name of God became part of their personality. They became Yehudim. That's the madrig of Yehudim, of Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid to the highest level. The Ramah Mipano reveals to us that the word Shilas is a Rashi Tevis. Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. Amar Rav Yehuda, Brei, Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas. By the way, Rav Yehuda Brei, Rav Shmuel Bar Shilas was a descendant of Haman himself, and that's for a different discussion. Let's talk for a moment. The first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. You know what the first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch is? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. The first Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. Haga, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. What's the last Ramah in Aruch Chaim? Haga, Toiv Leiv Mishnah Tamid. Two Tamids. The first Tamid is Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid. I place God before me always. The second Tamid is Toiv Leiv Mishnah Tamid. A good heart will always have a party. Two Tamidim. Carbon Tamid Shal Shachar, Tamid Shal Bein Harbayim. Says the Chidah, there's a reason the Ramah begins Shulchan Aruch with the word Tamid and ends Shulchan Aruch with the word Tamid. If you're Mekayim, if a person lives with God before their eyes, Tamid, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, one will then reach the level of Toiv Leiv Mishneh Tamid. How does one acquire happiness in this world? If a person puts Hashem before them always, Tamid, they will have the other Tamid, Toiv Leiv Mishneh Tamid. These are the two Tamidim. The more God is in front of you, the more happiness you'll have. The more Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, the more Toiv Leiv Mishneh Tamid. La Yehudim! If you reach the madrega of Yehudim, of Shivisi Hashem lenegdi tamid, Haysa Oira v'simcha, then you'll have happiness. You'll have the Leiv Toiv Mishneh Tamid. So Saturday night is a very sad time. Motzei Shabbos is a very sad time. You know why? Because you have to take leave of Shabbos. There's an incredible pshat that Rav Hutner brings from the Mekubala and probably Rav Kohen, that the Gemara says, Mordechai, if you look in the Megillah, Mordechai wanted to make Purim a Yom Tiv, the Jewish people did not accept it. Can you imagine coming to Jews and say, you have an extra day off, you have an extra Yom Tiv, and the Jews said, no thanks, we don't want a day off. Why were the Jewish people not accepting of Purim as a Yom Tiv? They said, we'll have a holiday, but no Isur Malacha, we got to work. Why didn't the Jews want to be Makabel Purim as a Yom Tiv? Says Rav Hutner, if you accept Purim as a Yom Tiv, guess what you have to do when Purim is over? You have to make Havdalah. And the Jewish people never want to make Havdalah from Purim. They never want to be separated from Purim. They want to be connected to Purim the whole year. Shabbos we need to take leave of. We only have Shabbos one day a year. Purim, it's Mishanichnas Adar Marbin B'Simcha. You increase your joy in Adar, but you're happy through Purim the whole year long. And therefore every Saturday night, as we're taking leave of the Holy Shabbos, we encourage ourselves by saying, even though we have to take leave of Shabbos, there's one thing a Jew never has to take leave of. A Jew never has to take leave of Purim. La Yehudim! We smell the Hadassim to remember Esther. We have the two Neiros to remember Mordechai and Esther. And we invoke the salvation of Purim. Because the salvation of Purim teaches us the key to happiness. The key to happiness is La Yehudim Haisa'ira V'Simcha V'Sasam Mikar. There are two Tamidim in this world. Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Tamid and B'Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid. And the Jewish people in times of Purim, by witnessing this magnificent method, divine method of Al Ha'etz Asher Heichid Lain, they recognize not only Shilas, Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Tamid, but they integrated it and they elevated themselves to the Madriga of Yehudim, and therefore they merited La Yehudim Haisa'ira V'Simcha V'Sasa Mikar. So may we also merit to try to integrate into our consciousness Shivisi Hashem L'Negdi Tamid, the first halacha in Shulchan Aruch, and thereby may Hashem bless all of us with the last halacha in Shulchan Aruch, the Toiv Leiv Mishtat Tamid. Thank you so much for listening, and let me be the first to wish you early Freilach and Purim. Shkayach.
Shama shir shir